Yeehaw, everybody. This is the Author's Best Friend podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and I'm here today with my new bestie, HK Green. HK, what are you drinking?
I've got an Arnold Palmer Light.
Oh, yum. I'm also drinking a tea rendition. I made some iced peach tea today. So cheers. Excited to talk about the pieces we've lost.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited partially because you released your blurb a little bit ago, like maybe a week or so ago, to The Pieces We've Lost, your debut novel. And so I'm eager to pepper you with some questions about that. But also, I'm very much so in my cowgirl era because I'm currently obsessed with the show Farmer Wants a Wife. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yes.
And I hope there was a new episode last night because they keep going on breaks and it's driving me crazy. I'm also going to Nashville in a few weeks for my bachelorette. And so I've been getting like all the cowgirl boots and hats and cow print things. And so I'm really in my cowgirl era right now. And you're an indie author writing a cowboy romance. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah.
A cowboy romance?
Yeah, it's a cowboy romance.
Okay. And you're also like a true cowgirl, right? Like you grew up on a wheat farm. Is that right?
I did, yes.
Yeah. And your boyfriend has a family ranch, I think you said?
Yep. And his family they're a pretty big rodeo family. He used to compete in rodeo and then his parents still compete.
That's really cool. That's awesome. So I'm really just interested to know a little bit about that first, actually, before we talk about the book. Like, what was that like growing up on a farm and meeting somebody who also is familiar with the farm life?
Yeah. So I grew up on a wheat farm in a super tiny town in Montana. When I say tiny, I mean tiny, like 150 people.
Oh my gosh, that's so tiny.
Yeah. So when people say small town romance, like it's so hard for me to not think 150 people or 200 people. But yeah, I grew up on a wheat farm. My dad is second or third generation farmer. My mom also grew up on a farm. They actually grew up in towns that were 15 minutes away from each other.
Cute.
Yeah. But
wait, so are your parents kind of like a little small town romance?
Kind of. Kind of, but there's an age gap between them. They're 7 years apart. So they met after college.
I see. So slight small town romance with an age gap.
Yes. Yes, definitely. But yeah, farming and just kind of that small town lifestyle was always kind of ingrained in me, kind of the lifestyle where everybody knew everybody's business. And then I went to a bigger city for college, and I guess big for Montana because it's only about 60,000 people. So not super big. But then I met my boyfriend when we were here at college, and the way that we met is honestly like rom-com material in itself. But he grew up on a ranch outside of Billings, Montana. I feel like we just hit it off, just both being in that agriculture lifestyle. But there's always kind of the joke that, like farmers and ranchers a little bit go head to head, just like with it being different. But there's so many similarities too. Like the lifestyle is super rewarding, but it's also really hard work. And I think just like having similar work ethics, and our parents are very similar. Our dads are like basically the same person, just one's a farmer, one's a rancher.
For us lay folk, what's the difference between a farmer and a rancher?
I think some people might see it differently, but for me, it was just crops and no animals.
Okay.
I didn't grow up with cattle or any farm animals or anything like that. And then for him, he grew up with cattle, but no crops.
I see. Okay. And so the difference being you get up every day and you're either tending to, like cows or pigs or sheep, or you're tending to crop.
Yeah, that's the way that I would see it differently. But I feel like some people would still see like animals like pigs or chickens as on a farm too. But for me, just crops was always farming. And then cattle was ranching.
I see. Okay. What does it look like to live on a farm and work on a farm? Like, I imagine your alarm's going off at 4 a.m., something crazy, and you're working all day. Like, what did your summers look like, I guess, like when you would come from college?
So my dad does most of the work, honestly. And he was up from 4 a.m. and especially during harvest, he was up from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. He wouldn't get back home until probably midnight. And it always looks a little bit different parts of the year. So, but he's really working year round. In the spring, he's seeding and planting for the crops. And then in the summer, we're harvesting. And then in the fall, he's also seeding. So there's different types. There's winter wheat, and then spring wheat. And then he's also spraying the crops to make sure there's no weeds. And then it always seems like something's broken. So he's repairing stuff in the summer too. I feel like all of the breakdowns always happen during harvest without fail.
But this is like acres of land. Like he's on like a machine of some sort.
Yeah. So we have a seeding machine with a tractor, or I guess a seeding attachment for a tractor, and then a combine, which is what we use to harvest. And then he has a sprayer machine too. So lots of different machinery.
That's cool. Yeah. So, but I imagine maybe going to college in Montana, there's a lot of people that are familiar with that lifestyle. Or was it like you met your boyfriend and it was like, oh yeah, he gets it. Like he understands the lifestyle.
I worked for admissions for the school that I went to. So it's a pretty even 50-50 split between out of state and in state. So I feel like there was a good mix of people who were familiar with agriculture and then people who weren't. But when we met each other, it definitely just clicked.
Do you feel like there were people that were coming to the university really hoping to have their like Hallmark movie moment where they show up and they're like, I'm going to meet a cowboy or I'm going to meet a cowgirl on Montana?
Probably. But I feel like there's a ratio. I'm not sure what it is, but there's definitely like the mix of actual real cowboys who grew up on a ranch or grew up on a farm, and then there's the fake cowboys.
Yeah. Yeah, that just pop on a hat. That's me. I'm just a fake cowgirl walking around in Nashville in a couple months, but I embrace it. Well, okay. So your life feels very much like a Hallmark movie in that, you're growing up in this town where like actually people are gossiping about their neighbors and they know, what happened down the street. And then you went away to college and met somebody and fell in love. And when you decided that you wanted to write a book about, is he a roper?
Yeah, he's a team roper.
Okay. So when you wanted to write about somebody or people that are sort of living lives that you're familiar with, did you know, looking back, like this is kind of like a cute quintessential type of romance? Like I guess there are movies like The Long Ride and like they play up sort of like the sweet like salts of the earth cowboy books. But like when you thought about writing a book for the first time, was it like obvious to you like, oh, this is the kind of story that I think that I would like to write, and I think that there are a lot of cute aspects of this that I want to play out? Or you had mentioned that maybe you played around a little bit with thrillers when you were young or like in high school. What was that choice like?
So when I decided to write this book, it was honestly kind of a spur of the moment thing. I wrote a book, quotes, in 5th grade. And it was like basically just a little short story. It was about a haunted classroom.
Please give me more information about that.
I don't even remember. It was called The Ghost in Classroom 51. And that's all I remember about it. But I remember I was so proud of this. And I was showing it to all my teachers. And I was in like 5th grade, like with my handwritten little book that I wrote.
That's so cute.
But I joined Bookstagram last year and really got started back into reading after I graduated college. It just was when I was in college, I didn't read a ton. With my degree, I was already reading a ton and I didn't have a lot of time to read for fun. But then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver and then Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. And it was really it was a spur of the moment thing, writing a book. I was talking to one of my other Bookstagram friends and she talked about the book that she wanted to write. And I remember my boyfriend Chisholm and I were running to the store to go get something. And I was like, what if I just wrote a book? And so we both brainstormed this idea. I always kind of knew that if I were to write a book, or at least in that moment, I knew that I wanted to write a cowboy romance, something that I was really familiar with. And one thing that I really wanted to focus on with a cowboy romance was portraying the lifestyle and the sport accurately. There's a lot of cowboy romances out there, but I definitely feel like mine kind of digs into the cowboy ranch rodeo life a little bit more. I like to say that my book is 30% rodeo, 40% romance, and 30% emotional damage.
The perfect ratio.
Yes. The perfect blend.
Have you seen, like, have you read books or have you seen, you don't have to name them, or but like seen movies where you've been like, that's not real. That doesn't happen.
Definitely. All the time. And there's some little things that I put in my book that they seem like me like talking about the lifestyle, but it's me being like, it's like airing my grievances about these things just in my own book, just in a funny way.
That's cute. Was there anything that your boyfriend was like, make sure that you highlight this accurately? Or like, did he have any like strong opinions or feelings about anything that you put in there?
I asked him a lot of questions about the team roping. And I mean, I knew a lot about it already, but I did so much research. And anytime that I had a question about something, I asked him and I bounced a lot of ideas off of him too. There's actually one thing that happens in the book. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, you can read the prologue of my book, and that actually has this in it. But the thing that happens actually happened to him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's actually like a real thing that happened. And
everybody is running to go subscribe right now, myself included.
Yeah, it actually happened to him. So it's a real thing, except he's still here. He's like the luckiest unlucky person I've ever met.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's in the prologue.
Is he fact checking your book, or do you have any like other friends that you've given it to check for accuracy or just check for like anything, I guess? Like, do you have an author's best friend that you run things by?
Yeah, I run things by him. And then one of my friends, Bailey Hannah, she wrote a cowboy romance too. It's called Alive and Wells. And I would compare my book similarly to hers, or say that it's similar, just in that we both kind of dig into the lifestyle. Hers is a bit more ranching and kind of that slice of life type book. Mine is more of the rodeo stuff. But when I had my beta readers, I had 2 rounds of betas. I think I had 15 betas total, which feels like a lot now, but I'm glad that I had all of those eyes on it just for my first book. But I started talking to Bailey right after I finished with my first draft of my book, and then I just started reading hers as an arc. And so we became pretty close friends, and she was a beta reader for me. And now I have a group chat with her and Carly Brenna, another cowboy romance author, and we just bounce ideas off of each other all the time.
How cute. What was that like getting, so the beta readers were maybe some of the first feedback you'd gotten on the book. What was that like to see those? Was it, I don't know. I mean, if this is your first sort of book and you hadn't really done a lot of writing or anything in college and you were mostly a reader, like, were you feeling sort of vulnerable in that situation? Or was it just kind of like, yeah, this is my first time doing it, so I'm taking it all in stride? Or what was that like?
It was definitely scary putting your work out there, just because, you know, like your book is your baby and you love it so much. But also at the same time, my beta readers helped me so much. And I think the book has definitely improved from first draft to where it is now. But it was definitely scary. And there were some things where it would kind of like hit me when I read the feedback. But again, I'm still like very grateful for all of it, even the stuff that was a little bit more brutal. I think it was just remembering like a lot of things are personal opinion. And at the end of the day, it's my book, so I can do what I want. But I definitely considered everything that was being commented and all the feedback that was being given to me.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Did you have any like quotes that people were pulling that you were like, oh, I didn't even think that would like hit somebody or someone would really like that, but somebody else was like feet kicking over it?
Yeah. There were a lot of quotes that people highlighted and said that it was their favorite quote. I hadn't thought of it before, but also the parts where people cried was not what I was expecting, actually. I was expecting a different part of the book for people to cry, but then one of my beta readers, who is a close friend, she sent me a picture when she finished of tears streaming down her face.
Oh my gosh, you made somebody cry. That's so sweet.
You know, I had at least 4 beta readers tell me that they cried, so.
Oh my gosh, wow, you did a good
job.
You literally wrote, you were like, I'm going to cause pain, and then you actually got people to cry. That's very validating.
That was I'm not going to lie when I said that was my goal, because I cried writing it. I cried writing the book.
Yeah. I wonder if that's I'm imagining that's experience for lots of authors, which is like, this emotionally hits me. It's got to emotionally hit somebody else. And especially if some of that, is based on a true experience and is somebody that you love, that's kind of, it's exciting that you get to tell their story with new characters in a different way. But I could definitely see how that's very raw. It's really close to home.
It's very validating, though.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's very exciting feedback.
Thank you.
Speaking of basing it off of real events, are Ellison and Colter, like, what is the inspiration for your two main characters? Am I saying that right? Ellison?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if originally they were based off of anybody, but as I started writing, as I kept writing, more pieces of myself and my boyfriend were just kind of woven in. And so there's actually quite a few similarities between my relationship and my character's relationship. Kind of just put myself in the characters, just kind of threw myself in there. But when I first met my boyfriend, I was like, this guy is way too nice. He's annoying. I don't know if I actually like him. And there's definitely a bit of that dynamic with Ellison and Colter. It's kind of, she's very annoyed with him at first, and he's like obsessed immediately.
That's really cute. So do you ever write Ellison doing things that you wouldn't do? Like, do you ever like give her, it's like a version of HK that's like maybe doing things that you wish that you would have been able to do, or like maybe she acts in ways in which you were like, I actually would never do something like this, but it fits with the character. Like, I talk a lot with Sierra about anthropomorphic hands and how sometimes your hands just kind of carry the story away and your characters do these things, and then now you're like, why did I do that? Why are my characters acting like this? I don't know, but I'm just going with it. And so I feel like when you put yourself in those characters, you're kind of like, well, I would never do this, but Ellison's going to do it, and we're just going to see how it works.
I feel like there was more of what I would actually do. I kind of wrote it from a couple of things from the perspective of how I would act, but there were definitely some moments where I'm like, okay, you're being a brat, and I don't know if I would actually do this, but maybe I would. I don't know.
Oh, so then that's really raw too. If you feel like you've put yourself in characters a little bit and then you get, harsh criticisms about like, Ellison is a brat. You're like, okay, that's me, but that's fine.
I'm just like, if you don't like Ellison, you don't like me by default. So
that's okay. So what part of the process are you in right now? So when did you get beta reader feedback?
So I finished my first draft at the end of October. I had the idea. I got it and wrote it down in my notes in July of last year. And then I wrote maybe like 2,000 to 3,000 words, kind of put it on pause, picked it up back in September, and then finished within those 2 months, which is insane, honestly. And then I had a close friend as kind of an alpha reader after doing some minor self-edits, and then did her edits. Most of my edits in the beginning were me taking out repeat words. I had a lot of those crutch words. And I added a few things, changed some wording. And then I did my first round of betas in the second half of November, first half of December. Took a month to do edits and kind of let it sit for a little bit. And then I gave it to my second round of betas January through February. So now I'm at the point where I'm just waiting and going to send it to my editor in a few weeks.
Okay. What's your relationship with your editor like?
Bailey actually referred her to me. And so I emailed her pretty early in the process. And then we started following. I think she had actually followed me on Instagram before I reached out to her. But we have a good relationship. I feel like we have kind of close to more of like a friendship almost. But it's a really good relationship. I definitely trust her with my work, and she beta read my book also, and her comments were the best. Like she prefaced it with, these comments might come off as blunt, but I'm a blunt person. But every comment that she made absolute perfect sense to me. Some of them were really funny, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, it feels so much safer to give your work to somebody who feels like a friend like that, because any sort of like criticism they're giving you is coming from a place of like, I just want your book to be really good, Whereas, sometimes you get feedback from readers, and it's maybe a little harsh, but it's also just like, maybe this just isn't for you, you know, like my characters, not all characters have personalities that everybody's going to like, or they do things that not everyone's going to like, and that's okay. That's what makes the romance genre so great, because there's so many tropes that some people are like, absolutely not. I would never read that. That is cringy. And then you have this whole subset of people that are just like, it's my favorite trope. It's all that I read. And so it doesn't, like, you're not writing for everybody. You're writing for that subgroup of people that are going to, like, you know, be crying over your writing and been like, oh my gosh, like, I love this so much. This is my favorite quote. This is so cute. And it feels nice and safe to have somebody that you know is giving you feedback, because, you know, they have a sense of what you want the book to be like, and they can help you to bring that to light by pointing out some of the, like, this is confusing, or like, this plot line didn't really make sense to me, while also at the same time sharing all of their, like, giddy emotions and feelings about that. Those reactions are fun.
Yeah, definitely. I had a lot of therapy bill comments.
That's great. Okay, so you mentioned that in the blurb that Colter is working on healing his own heart, or something to that effect. Could you hint a little bit about what that pain situation is like, or like what exactly it is that we're going to need to bring the Kleenex out for?
It's definitely, I don't want to give away too much, but there's something in his past that affects him and a lot of his self-worth. He struggles a lot with feeling like he's not good enough for people, and he doesn't want to fail. And so that's kind of his internal struggle, is that he doesn't want to open up to anybody. He doesn't want to have his heart broken like that again. So he just wants to focus on rodeo and team roping and being a cowboy and winning buckles. Doesn't have time for anything else, because he doesn't want those feelings of not feeling like he's good enough or worthy of love.
I see. And so is it kind of like a Grumpy Sunshine situation, or is he like more like fun loving, but I'm not going to get too deep? Like, we'll be friends and we'll play around, but don't ask me to share my emotions.
He's definitely the golden retriever, Sunshine part of the two. Ellison is more of that black cat, grumpy FMC. She's pretty sassy.
Gotcha.
But Colter, it's kind of funny because he talks about, you know, like, I just want to focus on team roping. I just want to focus on rodeo. And then he runs into Ellison at the bar, and he's immediately like, oh my God, I need to find out more about her, because she doesn't want anything to do with me. And so he's like, just immediately kind of like, he's kind of obsessed, kind of infatuated, but not in like a stalkery way.
Cute. And so she has to like use her sort of black cat sassiness to get him to open up a little bit. Love that dynamic.
Yeah, and it's a lot of, actually, it's almost more of him getting her to open up, because she has that deep childhood trauma of her dad dying in a rodeo accident. And so her thing is, no cowboys. I don't want to have anything to do with rodeo. She used to love it when she was a kid and her dad was still alive. That was the thing that her entire family loved. After his accident, she's like, no, no more of this. I just don't want to be associated with it. Cowboys only bring heartache. But she makes an exception once every year, because her mom still loves rodeo. And so she goes to the rodeo in Houston. That's where the first part of the book is set. Is in Houston, Texas. She goes to the rodeo on the day of the anniversary.
Oh, and that's where she meets him?
She meets him at the bar the night before.
The night before. Okay. But she doesn't, okay, maybe I won't ask that. I'll save that. Yeah. I think I knew that you meant business when you said that you were going to bring the pain, and I saw I Drive Your Truck on the playlist, the music playlist for the book, and I was like, oh no, she can't do that to us. That hurts too much.
That song makes me cry every single time.
Yeah, it's so sad. Well, I'm really excited. One other thing I wanted to ask about specifics about the book was, were there any really quintessential scenes that you felt like you wanted to put in there, or anything that's like a nod to like true lifestyle, whether that be like on the farm or like pop culture-y things about, like, I think you mentioned Buckle Bunny a couple times. So like, are there any like references in the book or any particular scenes that you were like, this has to be in there because this is not a cowboy romance without it?
There's a lot of like cowboy superstitions that I put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of things that are kind of specific to kind of niche, but I'm hoping that people from reading the book kind of learn a little bit more about them.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I wanted to put in actual scenes of them team roping and of the rodeo happening. So there's, I think, like 6 scenes of that happening. But there's there's one thing that I put in there. I dislike the one horse trope. I dislike it so strongly
Wait,
because
okay, is the one horse trope like there's only one horse available, so they ride it together? Okay.
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
And I dislike that trope unless it's in fantasy. In a fantasy, I can kind of
Okay.
look past it.
Is it just like not practical or why don't you like it?
No, it's not very practical. It's not very probable unless it's like a child. Because you're thinking about this cowboy who's supposedly like 200 pounds or so, maybe more, and then the person that he's with is like maybe 150. I don't know, somewhere around there. So you already have 350 pounds plus all of your equipment, your saddle on top of this horse's back. I don't know. It just doesn't seem probable to me.
How much can horses usually hold?
I am not sure exactly.
I mean, that feels like a lot. I mean, I feel like elevators are like 800 pounds and we can't move, and that's like made of like steel. So you're putting like almost 500 pounds on the back of like an animal.
Yeah, I feel like when you get to the point of it being 500 pounds, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
so
guess,
funny. You're just sitting there like, this poor horse, this is not sexy.
yeah, so I knew that was one thing that I definitely wanted to put in the book, but I think it's also different where if you have two people riding doubles on a horse, it's very different if the horse is walking versus like galloping. Like it's not going to do that.
I see. Okay.
It's not going to go very fast
So you do have a one horse trope in there?
with a twist.
With a twist. Okay. Yeah, this kind of feels like when authors do like the couple is going to the hotel room and you're like, oh, it's gonna be one bed, and they open it and it's like it's 2 beds and they're like, you thought I was doing that, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like that.
That's funny. That's so cute. Well, now I'm gonna giggle when I read that, now that I know this information.
I also have a lot of just really, really stupid humor in there.
Hey, writing stuff that just makes yourself laugh or your friends or your loved ones, I feel like is totally okay. Somebody else out there will think it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm funny. So, I mean, sometimes I'm like, I really hope that people don't DNF my book because of my humor, but you got to get through the really stupid, dry humor at some points to get to the good stuff. So,
Again, that's just for that subgroup of people that are, find that amusing. Do you have any other like pop culture references, or like, I guess you don't really need that because you live the lifestyle and you have those sorts of things. But I'm just thinking like this sort of cowboy culture or like letting people in on what farm life is like has kind of moved. Maybe it's low wave right now, but with like Yellowstone coming out and like Farmer Wants a Wife and even like American Sniper, I feel like showed a lot of those types of themes. Like there was a lot of stuff in pop culture for a while that was highlighting this. Did any of that like motivate, or do you watch any of those things and enjoy those types of like stories about cowboys?
I refuse to watch Yellowstone.
Really? Why?
Maybe it's just the Montanan in me. But I have never been into it.
They're in Wyoming, is that right?
No, they're in Montana.
They're in Montana. Oh, I'm thinking of actual Yellowstone is in Wyoming, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the park is half in or partially in Montana and then mostly in Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
But the TV show is set in Montana.
I see. Okay. Do a lot of what do Montanians? What do they call themselves?
Montanans.
Montanans. Do a lot of Montanans like refuse to watch that show?
I feel like there's a good mix, or like people who do watch Yellowstone, they're like, yeah, this isn't how Montana really is. I feel like when Yellowstone came out, we had a lot of people from out of state wanting to move to Montana because they thought that was what Yellowstone, or like they thought that Yellowstone was what Montana was actually like. I think that's where a lot
Oh,
of
wow.
the dislike for it comes from. Or
So you guys aren't like fighting tourism and you're like, let's keep it, like, let's keep the land. Don't put an airport here.
I think it's the difference between like I feel like it all comes down to just like the capitalism too.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the locals here in town, they're like, I don't love all of the people coming in because they're raising the housing prices and people who
Yeah.
have lived here for years are being forced to move out. But it's also good for tourism, definitely.
That kind of feels like the typical struggle of small town anyway, which is the balance of like enjoying the tourism and welcoming people and bringing in revenue that way, but then also like, but we still live here. Like, please don't
Yeah.
take all of our property.
I didn't mention it specifically in my book, but I kind of made like a little nod to like, TV and entertainment nowadays makes everybody want to go live and work on a ranch or marry into a ranching family.
Mm-hmm.
So I make that kind of reference, but I don't mention like Yellowstone or Farmer Wants a Wife or anything like that explicitly. I do I do drop in The Bachelor once. Grease is in there, a little niche
Nice.
thing. There's
Cute.
a lot of there's song references and there's a lot of references to George Strait. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's one song by David Allan Coe that's referenced. It's not name dropped in there, but that song is referenced, if you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
I'm from Bakersfield. I grew up in Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
And so I've heard quite a bit of David Allico.
Yeah, so I referenced that. I don't know. I referenced Colton's season of The Bachelor, where
Mm-hmm.
Ellison and her best friend are watching it or are choosing what they want to watch. And they're like, well, we like watching trashy reality TV. And
Mm-hmm.
so her best friend is like, there's either Ben's season that we can watch on Hulu or Colton's season. And then she's like, do you think Coulter could jump a fence?
That's cute.
So it's like
That's
those little
fun.
things.
Yeah, that's fun. While you were talking, I just was randomly thinking, have you read hockey romances before?
Yeah.
Like there are hockey books where like, they're getting really into the weeds of what a certain like hockey play looks like and like the change of the lines and like where the puck is and where each like defenseman is and whatever. And it like helps like intensify with those small details. Do you feel like it's similar to writing like scenes of like somebody being like in the rodeo, like writing small details about every little thing so that when there is some sort of, it's like making readers like gasp? Like what is that? Is it similar to write a scene like that where there's like a lot of stuff going on and this horse is moving and there's a lot of moving parts related to it. And so I feel like that feels like a high tension thing to write where there's a lot of small details that can help like heighten the tension.
Yeah, definitely. When I was writing my rodeo scenes, I actually added in a glossary of rodeo terms because
Oh,
I
great.
realized later on that I used so many terms and not a lot of people are familiar with rodeo. So I added
Hmm.
a little glossary. It's like Rodeo 101 in the beginning of the book. If you don't kind of explain the rodeo as it's happening or like the team roping in action with these little things, like these technical things, it's
Hmm.
really kind of like the steer was let out of the chute and it started running and then the horse followed and I roped it. So it's really kind of anticlimactic if you don't add those technical things. Um, so I added some technical things to it, but then also adding in the announcer's voice kind of to break up the action.
Hmm.
Because when you go
Oh,
to a
that's cool.
rodeo, the announcers and the commentators are kind of they're almost just as fun to listen to as it is to watch it, and they kind of add a lot of life to it. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of the announcer's voice in those scenes.
I see. That's a cool aspect. I forget about that. Yeah. That's really cool. Okay, so shifting gears just a little bit away from the book specifically, I wanted to talk a little bit about your social media because your social media is super cute. Do you do it all on your own or like what inspires your content creation?
Yeah, I do all of my social media on my own. I have experience with social media marketing and social media management.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working for the university, I ran the admissions social media page. And when I was in high school, I was in some organizations where I was running social media accounts. So I have a bit of experience with that. And I use Canva to make all of my graphics. And I really enjoy the social media aspect of writing. Sometimes I think that I like making graphics and pulling quotes more than I actually like writing the book. But I'm a very type A person when it comes to my social media. If you look at my social media feed, there's definitely like an aesthetic and kind of pattern to it. But I'm a very type A person because I have a whole marketing calendar schedule made in my Google Drive and Google Sheets, like color coded and everything, like by week from January 1st until my release day.
You've already mapped all of those out?
I have everything planned out.
How long does it take you to do that?
Well, my problem is my motto is like never let them know your next move. So I've moved my release date so many times. I originally said early 2025, and then I changed it to fall 2024, but it may or may not be a little bit sooner than that.
Oh, exciting.
So I have kind of redid my social media calendar a couple times. But when I was making the original one for fall or for early 2025, it probably took me like a couple hours. But a lot of things that I didn't fill in either. So I was like writing in release day reveal, cover teaser, cover reveal, those types of things. And then I have it set up so it's like color coded by the feed post, so like by the grid. And so I have like a teaser and then something in between and then another teaser. And so if I don't know like what my teaser quote is going to be or the thing that I'm putting in, I'll just put teaser and then add it in later. So a lot of things weren't filled in, but now that I've moved up my release date at a significant amount, it's a lot easier to just fill it in.
Yeah. Do you feel like planning out that far in advance, it's hard to like keep up with trends? I feel like sound bites and like themes and things that are working on Bookstagram change so frequently. Like I'm really bad about being on social media, but I'll be on there one week and looking, I'm like, oh, this soundbite has played like 50 times or like this little GIF or whatever. And then I'll be back like 2 weeks later and it's something completely different. I'm like, oh, I guess that other thing isn't cool anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely hard having such a set, almost rigid schedule. I have to kind of force myself to be a little bit more flexible. But I've gotten a lot better with that, especially with reels. I'll just kind of post reels whenever I want. I originally had it where I was doing like the reel covers, so then it was all matching when you went to my reels tab, but then I was like, screw that, I'm not doing that anymore. And so I kind of make reels and then I make like generic ones with quotes and then add sounds to them later, or I'll change them up a little bit. That's why I haven't worked with like a PR company or anybody else to do my social media management, just because I change things so often. But with like feed posts, there was one trend that was going around that was like, I write books for ... And I kind of changed my feed around a little bit so then I could post that. That's like the only thing that I've really changed.
Yeah. So when you were doing social media for admissions, like at the university, were you looking at like analytics and like how well things were working?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're familiar with like doing that now and seeing like what posts are doing well and what things like, I feel like for at least for a few of the authors I've spoken to, like social media is just hard to figure out. Like what is the algorithm? I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what these people want. Sometimes I'm posting something and it gets, like 300 likes, and other times it's just two little people out there that are giving me a thumbs up. Like I don't know what I'm doing differently.
Yeah, I look at analytics, but most of the time I'm just like, I don't really know what the algorithm is. So I'm just going to put this out there and hope and pray for the best. Because like I had a post, it was like a spicy reel. I posted it on TikTok and it blew up. Like it has 50,000 views right now. And then I posted it on Instagram and it got like 700. So I don't know. I'm just like, throwing it out there, manifesting that a video will blow up.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. And I feel like what the people want on TikTok is different than what the people like on Instagram. Like, I just feel like even if it's the same person, the user is looking for something different across the apps. And that's hard to target that. And then it's like you're making dual content. And then it's like you're making content to do well on TikTok. And then you're making content to do well on Instagram. And also you're trying to write a book and market yourself. And that's that's a heavy load.
Yeah, it's also definitely really hard with TikTok because when you post over there, if the book's not out yet, people are kind of like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
they don't really care or they don't really follow you. They're just like, okay, this book's not out yet. I'll save it, but then they'll never come back to it. Where
Yeah.
Instagram is a little bit different, I feel like, because people are more willing to follow you on Instagram because you have those static posts as well as the reels and not just videos like
Hmm.
TikTok.
Yeah, that's a good point. So those people, the TikTok people, you need to be posting like 24 hours before your book comes out, or
Yeah.
like, here it is, go buy it. Whereas
Yeah.
Instagram, like, you can build the hype. You can get people excited for like 3 months.
Yeah, I feel like Instagram is more of that. It's easier to have that slow burn marketing tactic where like TikTok, once your book comes out, you kind of hit the ground running then.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And, well, congrats on getting your website up and going and
Thank you.
your newsletter. I imagine as a type A person that was really fun to make, but also maybe kind of stressful. I was putting together your website.
It was really easy. I use Squarespace and their templates and their site is really user friendly. It was really fun to use my creative side for that, but I made it early because I got the 30-day free trial and then I let it sit for a long time before actually buying the subscription. Because I had to change things. I had to change
Yeah.
my blurb because it wasn't right because I had changed it and updated it. And then I had to change the release date from coming out in 2025 to fall 2024, which is also not fall 2024 anymore, but
Are you thinking like summertime, maybe?
late summer.
Late summer. Okay. Exciting. Well, that's good because honestly, I was prepping for the podcast and I was like getting really excited about stuff, and then I was like, "Oh, well, I won't be able to read this till fall, and so I'm going to get all of these fun spoilers and get all excited, and then I'll just keep it bookmarked." I mean, whatever it is, if the writing inspiration came early and you wrote it really quickly or you got reviews better, I think that's good. I feel like a lot of authors dread doing the editing process. And so then you kind of plan to like, I'm going to sit on this for at least a month. And so plotting all of that out early in advance, is that what happened? Like you had drawn things out and then you were like, that actually went by faster than I thought it would.
Yeah, I was not anticipating finishing my book so soon. In my last week of writing, I wrote 20K words, so I was just ready to be done with
Wow.
it. So I just blew through the ending. I was like, I am ready to be done with this. I don't want to write this book anymore. So I
Mm-hmm.
just, I think my last day I wrote 12,000 words. So it was insane. I was
That's
not
wild.
anticipating. Yeah, I was not anticipating being done so early. So when I started, I was like, yeah, I mean, I'll probably not release it until 2025. And then when I finished my first draft, I was still kind of like, I want to take my time on editing because I've been editing for like, what, 5 months, really taking the time to make it the best that it can be. And then my thought process was also if I push it out until 2025, I can write my other future books and be ahead for
Mm-hmm.
future releases. That also hasn't happened. So it's been a little bit slow over here.
Well, I feel like that's a lot. Like you finish a book and then you already are thinking about what your next steps are going to be. But like, I mean, you have this period of time where your baby's done and ready, but it's not out yet. And so there's still lots of like attention that it needs before you can start looking at your second born. And it's just like, it's
Mhm.
kind of overwhelming.
The Pieces We Lost is the first in a series, 6 books, is what I'm planning. Yes.
Dang, girl.
Yeah, so it follows the guys
Uh-huh.
in the Pieces We've Lost in Coulter's friend group. So it's a little bit different in that it follows a guy friend group and not because I feel like books usually follow FMCs and their friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it follows the guys, and then there's also a prequel book.
Oh my gosh, fun. You know,
Yeah.
I should not be surprised by this. When you told me that you're type A and you're plotting out like, all of your posts, I should have known that you would be, you know, having something wonderful in store for us, like a 6, potentially 7 book long series.
So it's 5 books, including The Piece We Lost and then a prequel. So 6 total, yeah. But
Gotcha.
I have like 13 book ideas. I have so many. They just keep coming, and then I have like 5 documents, not including my debut that I've written in.
Mm-hmm.
So I have all these like partial works in progress. But I finally was like, nope, I need to not write 5 different books at the same time.
HK, control yourself.
I know, it's so bad. And some of them, like I planned out all of my releases kind of too, like general timelines of when I want them to come out. And I have books until 2030. So
oh my gosh, you're
it's
spoiling
kind of
us.
I know. Author's best friend exclusive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. So are these like scenes that you've just written in these documents because you just had to get them down, or like you've actually started with like chapter 1, here's this thing?
Yeah, so I'm not a plotter at all. I'm a pantser and I write out of order. I that's like one thing with my debut. The timeline is a little bit messed up. Like not in a bad way, messed up, but it's a bit unconventional. The first 60% happens in the span of 2 weeks. And then the rest of it is like the span of 2-3 months. So it's a little bit messed up, but there's like montage chapters where it doesn't make sense to drag them out. But that happened because I wrote out of order.
Well, that's kind of fun though.
Yeah, it's a little bit unconventional, a little bit different than what people normally are reading. So hopefully people think that it's okay and that the pacing isn't too off. But I've only had one person say that the pacing felt weird to them, but everybody else liked it. So, but in my other books, I start out with kind of like an outline document. I call it an outline, but it's really just like me putting down my general ideas. I think of my titles for most of them are like what I think I want them to be, like in the beginning, with the exception of my debut. My working title for this one was Roped In.
Oh, cute.
Roped but then it changed. It changed.
But then you gave it a more of like deeper, painful title.
Yeah. It started out very like cliche, cheesy cowboy romance type title, and then just emotional damage, therapy bills.
Yeah. I feel like once you have most of the things written, you're kind of like, this book feels more pain than like cutesy romance, so it needs a title that will do it justice.
Yeah, definitely. But for my other docs, I have what the potential title will be, who the main characters are, tropes that I think I kind of want to tie in. I'm not like, I don't write my books based on tropes. Like I don't say like, oh, I'm gonna throw this in, like, and I'm gonna write it around this. Most of the time it's like, it's already a trope in the general idea that I had, but it helps to write it down. And then I write kind of like the general idea of what's going to happen. But really when I go in, I have no idea what's going to happen. So I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, just writing whatever comes to me.
Yeah, let the hands take the wheel.
Yeah. Jesus, take the wheel, honestly. That's what happens. Yeah. But for the 2 books that I'm focusing on right now, kind of ish too. There's one that's a standalone that I thought of actually because I was watching Farmer Wants a Wife. That's how the idea came to me. But I want
who's your favorite farmer?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Okay, no, I have a real question. Do you think, as somebody who, you know, is legitimate, because you said your dad's like a 2nd generation farmer, is Farmer Mitchell a poser? He wears so much fringe and like rides around on his little like motorcycle. He's like a 1st generation farmer. And I feel like the girls on his farm are just doing random stuff all the time. And like,
I gotta look him up.
The other guys, it's actually like, we're like cleaning this like potato thing, whatever. It's like the other guy's a potato farmer. So he has like a giant thing that's harvesting potatoes or whatever. Or they're like shoveling cow poop, or like they're doing legit labor. But I feel like girls on Farmer Mitchell's farm are just kind of like, like we're just hanging out, chasing the dogs around.
I can't even remember who he is. I had to look up a picture of him.
He has a horse, but that was new. I think they got the horse while the girls were there. Huh. He's just 1st generation farmer. Farming of what? It's not clear.
He's just live, laugh, loving his life.
Yeah, I was watching it with my fiance, and he was saying that he was like, this guy wears a lot of fringe to be a legit farmer. And I was like, yeah, I feel like he's wearing like outfits that he thinks farmers would wear, but his jeans are so tight and he's wearing so much fringe and he's riding around on a motorcycle.
Chisholm rides a motorcycle. So I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about that, so it's possible that that's just like, well, yeah, the cowboy look is what I wear to work, and then I'm like something else after, and so possibly it's like, yeah, we wear fringe and we ride motorcycles, and that's like normal. But these other guys just feel so like kind of shy, and like I like to stay home, and all my thoughts revolve around my farm, and I want somebody who can help me do that. And then they see these girls that are like have like really long acrylic nails, or like have their hair highlighted, and then they're like, oh, the beauty salon is like an hour away, and like they're just like, no, this doesn't seem like it's going to be a good fit. And that's like that subset of guys. But then I feel like Farmer Mitchell is over here just like he loves those women. And it's just, I'm like, first generation farmer, and his vibe is different from all the other girls. Like maybe this guy's like trying out farming for size because he thinks it's cool right now.
It's very possible. I haven't watched the episodes in a while. I feel like a while ago I like binged them all at once, but I'm so bad at watching TV shows that I just get distracted doing something else. But I remember the one guy, I can't remember his name, but like they went to like the rodeo and they watched him team rope. That's like the only one that I remember.
Farmer Ty.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I get my roping knowledge. But you should watch the upcoming ones because they do something really crazy. It like left on a cliffhanger on the last one, and I'm dying to know how it pans out.
I was watching The Bachelor.
Yeah, I haven't watched that in a while. I think around Ben Colton time is when I kind of stopped. I just picked up Love is Blind, and I started watching that. I didn't think that I was going to like it, and I kind of really like it.
I love trashy reality TV.
I'm very selective about it. I have a Samsung TV, and I put, like random shows on for my dog when I leave the house. And one time I came home and it was like Love After Lockup, I think is called. And it was like convicts after they get out of jail and like them dating and stuff. And it was so trashy and so cringy. I sat there and watched it for like 2 hours. And like this guy and his girlfriend were like breaking up on Valentine's Day. And he literally was like, I'm out of here. And then just like dabs and walks away. And I was like, who are these people? This guy's like covered in tattoos, and he just dabbed on his girlfriend and walked away. It was just, was so funny. That is a guilty pleasure. Farmer Wants a Wife and Love is Blind. Those are like, that's just my little corner of trashy TV that brings me so much comfort.
That's so funny. But yeah, my idea came from watching Farmer Wants a Wife. So it's set on a reality TV show. But with that one and then book 2 of my series, I kind of am having to plot a little bit. Like I kind of made like a storyboard-ish in my Google Sheets where I had lay out each chapter or how many I think that there's going to be. I usually estimate like 35 to start. And then I'll kind of just like put in what's going to happen, especially for book 2 of my rodeo series. I had to put in specifics of what was happening in each chapter a little bit more. But there's always those kind of open chapters where I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. So let's figure it out when I get there.
Well, I guarantee you, this will not be the last time that we talk on the podcast, because I've literally written down in my notes, Farmer Wants a Wife reality show book, because I will be asking you about that in the future. If I haven't seen teasers for it, I will not let you forget about it. But it was so great chatting with you, and I appreciate you being so open and sharing all of your tips and tricks, and also, all the things that you've been working on. And I'm so excited to read the pieces we've lost, and even more excited now that it's coming out early. Okay, so people can follow you on Instagram at author HK Green and see your content there. And then they can also go to your website, authorhkgreen.com, and they can subscribe to your newsletter and see content there. And then when your book does come out, where can they go to get a copy?
I'll have it on Amazon and on Kindle Unlimited. And then I'm also planning to go through Ingram Sparks. So hopefully indie bookstores. I'll also have signed copies on my own website when the time comes.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, definitely run to those signed copies for sure. Well, awesome. Well, it was so nice chatting with you. This was so much fun. And yeah, like I said, you will be back.
Yes, I would love to be back.
All right. See ya, HK.
See ya.